right, so here we are. We'll wait for a few people, I guess, to check in to see what's going on. How you doing, Pomai?
Hi, good.
Another interesting day.
Every day is an interesting day.
Oh, Carlene's on with us. Oh, we got a few people joining up on Facebook. There's Alexa. How you guys? Get going here in just a few seconds. We're trying a different format tonight. So for those of you watching on Instagram, I actually have Pomai via Zoom, who's put us on live on Facebook. So we're both on Facebook and on Instagram at the same time. Hey, everybody. And Pomai's going to ask me the questions, and we'll get started in a few seconds. So I guess I'm ready anytime you are, and we'll put these things up on YouTube afterwards.
Perfect.
All right.
All right. Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us again tonight for our live Q&A with Mitch Roth. And just to let you know, we will be doing this every Thursdays at 6 p.m. So keep sending in your questions, and Mitch will get to your questions every Thursdays. All right, so we will start with our first question tonight, Mitch. This comes via email from John.
Okay.
And John asks, what would you do to help sustain small businesses during and after this pandemic and future natural disasters?
Okay, so it's a really good question, John. We're going to have to start thinking about the way we do government a lot differently. This is different times, and we're going to have to start thinking about things differently. So one of the things that government needs to do a lot better right now is actually start looking at helping our businesses get back to business. There's grants that the government's putting out there. We're going to need to do a better job of helping people access money, do a better job of listening. There's also an opportunity for us to bring people together and listen to different ideas from the community. So those are some of the things that we can do right now. We need to start thinking about when this pandemic is over, how we start moving forward economically. And one of the answers to that is to start thinking about shovel-ready jobs, jobs that can go in. And so a lot of that is construction, get our construction industry up and going. It also is an opportunity for us to start thinking about the way we do tourism. Tourism's a little bit, we've never really thought about tourism. Now we have this opportunity to start planning how we go forward in the future. All right, Pomai, what's the next question?
So the next question comes in also via email from Daniel Hoshino. Okay. And Daniel would like to know, if you were mayor, what would you be doing right now to keep the case count as low as possible?
Great question, Daniel. I think first and foremost is communication, 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 and we need to be consistent with what we're saying. So we want people to stay at home. We want people to social distance. So we need to have that message. Also, what's going on? We see the mayors from Kauai, Maui, Honolulu getting out doing regular talks. I've been watching a lot of the governors from different states doing what they're doing, giving people information on what they can do. I think there's some great ideas that we've seen in this state as far as curfews. I think that's probably a good idea. I heard that the mayor of Honolulu is going to be requiring everybody to wear a face mask. I think that's another thing that we can do. But those are some of the ideas to keep the case count as low as possible. We need to protect our healthcare providers at every cost. We know that we have limited space. Luckily, we're not at the crisis level that they're in New York and other places in America. We have to prevent getting to that space. And so we need to start looking at ways that we can do that.
This next question also comes in via email from Todd Wilson. Todd asks, where do you stand on the removal of the Jones Act?
Well, I'm for removal of the Jones Act. I believe that Young Brothers and Matsons, they do a great job. I believe that they're going to be able to compete if we remove it. But one of the things that happens with the Jones Act, where we're shipping things, it raises the cost of goods. Right now, we need to make sure that we here in Hawaii can get things as cheap as possible. Now, another reminder is that the Jones Act is a federal law that needs to be changed. It's not something the counties can do, but we can advocate for getting rid of the Jones Act.
So via Facebook, Damon Tucker,
Hey, Damon.
questions from Damon. He asks, what do you think should be the punishment for those that break Governor Egan's stay-at-home order?
Okay, so there actually is a law that is in place. And I don't know if you saw, we've arrested about 9 people for that order. Currently, the penalties are, it is a full misdemeanor, up to 1 year in jail, up to a $5,000 fine. Now, we know our jails have been completely full, break busting at the seams. We don't have a lot of space to put people in. What we do with any criminal case is you look at the history of the defendant, what kind of criminal history they have, what the situation was when they were violating the law, and you take it from there. Some people, I'm going to be recommending that we go for a full $5,000 fine. Some people we're going to ask to put in jail. So it's going to be a case by case, and that's how we're going to handle these cases.
Leroy Everlasting also asked on Facebook, is it true that we cannot be out and about after 4:30?
So we do not have a curfew on our island. If you're going shopping or if you're doing an essential job, you can be out after 4:30 at this time.
This other question comes in from Sarah via Facebook. How is the 14-day quarantine being regulated?
So there's a couple of different quarantines that we're talking about. We're talking about the quarantine for people who are flying in from the mainland. There's a quarantine for people who are flying in our island. There's a quarantine for people who are tested positive. Generally, those are being regulated by Department of Health, and they're letting us know when people violate. The police in our office have been looking at different ways of enforcing those laws. There was a discussion, and it's kind of early to say that this is going to happen, but using National Guard people to regulate the quarantine people. Luckily, with the flight bans that have gone in place, there's very few people that we've had to quarantine at this time.
So Andrew Ban and Kimo Chow, they both want to know if they're allowed to go fishing during this time.
This is an interesting question, and you can see there's a couple of people who are asking the question about fishing. The law actually, under the governor's proclamation, I believe it does allow for fishing, hunting, surfing. Generally, if you're fishing for food for your family, I believe it is allowed.
Okay, so we want to remind you, if you are just tuning in, you are more than welcome to send in your questions, and Mitch is going to answer your questions as they come in. So go ahead, send in your questions. Mitch, this next question comes from Ione. Where do you stand on mandated vaccines?
I think vaccines are important. I think they're going to be important going forward in the future. I have a little bit of a problem with mandating people to do a lot of things. And at this time, I until we have a quarantine, a vaccine that works, I don't know if I'd mandate them at this time.
Okay. Scott Shepard wants to know, what is the single reason we should vote for you for mayor?
Wow. Okay. So, I guess, if you look at my history, and when I've run for office before, I've made promises. I don't make a lot of promises. I don't make promises I can't keep, and I keep the promises I make. And so if you look at my history, when I ran before, we said we're going to do things like cold cases that people said we couldn't do. We did those. We said that we're going to focus on sex assault, domestic violence, and change the way we do things. We've done those things. We said we're going to go upstream and look at juvenile offenders, because we know juvenile offenders become adult offenders. We've lowered the juvenile crime rate on our island by over 50%. Those are all promises I've made in the past when I was running for prosecutor. And so I believe you say things that you're going to do rather than make promises that people make when they run for office. I have a track record. I care about this island greatly. I know how government works, which is an advantage over a lot of other people who are running. I'm an attorney, so I know how to read the law, how to interpret the law. And we're going to need, coming out of this, we're going to need to obtain a lot of government grant funds. And I also have a track record of being able to do that. And this last year, we brought in millions of dollars for the Office of the Prosecuting Attorney. So I guess those are my one reason, a little bit more than one.
This next question comes in from Josh via the website, mitchroth.org. What is the current and upcoming turnaround on testing results? And how is that impact the representation of current case numbers?
Great question, Josh. And I know this because today I had the results come in for a couple of people from my own office that were waiting for about 14 days to get their results. Thank God they came in negative, so they don't have coronavirus. They're saying that in the next week that the new cases, the new tracks will take less than a week. We're hoping that that's true because we're seeing a lot of numbers come in for the Big Island, and it makes it really difficult for us to judge where we're at. I think they're going to start coming a lot quicker. We're going to be able to see that our social distancing, our staying at home really is keeping us under the curve. And it will tell us if we need to take more draconian measures, actually.
This next question comes from Gary. And Gary wants to know, what steps are island businesses and agencies taking to prevent unnecessary potential spread of the coronavirus through vectors such as gas pumps and pens at checkout?
Okay, so there's a lot of things that a lot of people are doing to prevent the spread. The single best thing that we can all do to prevent the spread is stay at home, keep good social distancing. I know that there's a lot of businesses that are doing some great things, a lot of organizations, the Boys and Girls Club. I know that they've been working with other agencies to provide meals. Commercial for the Boys and Girls Club. I have the good fortune of being on the board of directors. I will tell you that costs money. It's about $5,000 a week to feed people. So if people want to help donate to things like the Boys and Girls Club, Hope Services, there's a lot of great things that businesses are doing. We've talked to the Bay Clinic, what they're doing with testing. There's a lot that people can do to volunteer and help. But again, probably the best thing that people can do is stay at home, and not be part of that population that ends up in our emergency rooms or in our hospitals.
Sharyl Hoshino wants to know, with nearly 1 in 5 Americans living with mental illness and 1 in 12 living with addiction and deaths from suicide and overdose at an all-time high, do you feel prevention and breaking down barriers to quality treatment and care should be a top priority?
Throughout my whole career, I've worked in prevention with being a community-oriented prosecutor, and we know that prevention pays back in tenfold. One of the issues that we have on our island when we look at like homeless issues and things, it's not just being homeless, it's the mental health issues that really are big deals. It's the drug use that is really causing us a lot of harm. So I do believe that it should be a top priority for everybody.
So the next question comes in from the Robinson Ohana, who says, thank you for everything that you have done for our county. They want to know what your position is to build roads like Billy Kenoi started it back in Papa'aloa, and real property tax assessments increase even though we have no electricity or county water or internet connectivity.
This is one of the things that we're going to need to do as a government to get back on our feet. Like I said earlier, shovel-ready jobs. We have funds. We need to get people out there, our construction industry. Roads are a huge issue. Papa'aloa's one. I know in Kona's the roads from the upper road to the lower road down to Ali'i Drive. That has to be a priority. That was going to be a priority even prior to the coronavirus, we know that it's going to put people back at work, but more importantly, it's going to get people to where they need to be safely and in an expedited time.
All right, this next question comes in from one of our live feeds.
Okay.
And this comes from Laurie Shimabukuro and Robert Shimabukuro. I'm concerned about 197 inmates being released into the public. After being cooped up for so long, they will have a hard time being confined again. Also, where will they live?
Great questions, Laurie, Robert. This is something that we're dealing with. I've been dealing with for the last several weeks. So we saw this coming down the pipe, and so we started preparing. And so we started thinking about who is going to be released and how we would do that. And so we wanted to first start with our lowest level offenders, those people who are maybe in on traffic warrants and traffic cases, petty misdemeanors. You know, a lot of people say, you got to let go of the marijuana guys. Well, that equaled out to exactly 0 people throughout the state because we didn't have any low-level marijuana people in our jails. But, you know, if they were there, they would have been on that top list. And then we're starting to look at people who are just about to max out their time. In the news, you may have seen that the public defenders filed a writ last week, a writ of mandamus. The Supreme Court is requiring us to take action. We have already been taking action, and we wanted to make sure that who we release are the lowest level offenders, the least risky offenders, the people that are going to put our community in the least risk. So we're also looking at different things when they get released or if they're going to get released. We're trying to make sure that the people who are being released have a place to stay and they're going to agree to the proclamation, the bans on the proclamation. So people say, well, what about the homeless? Well, the homeless, you're taking one situation, one bad situation, putting them into another bad situation where they can affect a whole bunch of people, and those people would come back into the jail and infect everybody. Prior to this whole thing coming up, just so people know, in Hawaii County, some people have criticized, well, you're too soft on crime. Well, I don't think so. We've had our jails overfull for the last several years, and you can find that at the Department of Public Safety website under the Corrections Division end of month count. Basically, what that will show you is that every month they're at HCCC, which was built for 206 people, has an operating capacity of 226. We've been up at about 400 people, and that's about as full as the glass can be filled. Anytime you put more water in a full glass, you don't get more water in there, it just spills over. And so we've already had that happening. We knew that this was going to happen. And so we started taking steps to make sure that the least risky offenders would be the ones who'd be released, and they're released with a place to go. So they're not just out there roaming around. We wanted to be very careful and make sure that they're not releasing sex offenders, violent offenders, burglars, career criminals, people that, you know, go out and steal cars over and over and over again and keep on getting arrested. We wanted to go for the lowest level offenders. So that's what we've been doing, and that's how we're trying to assure that we're making sure the right people are let out, or the least dangerous people are let out, so our community is safe. It's a matter of thinking things. The safety of our community is really important, and you know, if we let people out, that makes our community may make our community a little bit more dangerous. If we keep them in, with 400 people who are incarcerated in the jails, with another 150 people who work in our jails, if there was a breakout there, it would really quickly overrun our hospitals and healthcare providers. And so those are our real heroes right now that we have to protect, as well as our first responders. Okay. Hey, Sammy, how you doing? Okay, so Sammy's asking on Instagram here, if the cases keep on going up, will the stay-at-home lockdown be extended? And I think the answer to that question, Sammy, is that it is that it's going to happen in other places. We're seeing that happen in other places. I'm really hoping that it doesn't happen here. I have great faith in our community of people working together and following through on these orders. That, you know, we are on an island geographically separated from the rest of the world. That's a real positive thing. We don't have people bringing it in from the mainland. So if we follow the rules, stay at home, stay safe, we can actually end this a lot sooner than any place else in the world. So I'm hopeful. As an island, we've come together before, and positive we're all going to come together again. So, all right, Pomai. So I was just reading Sammy's question there.
Well, aloha, we want to welcome you again. This is our live Q&A with Mitch Roth. We welcome your questions. You can send in your questions via our website, mitchroth.org, or right here on our live stream, and we'll see it. The next question comes from Anthony Turner, and Anthony wants to know, what is the first thing that you are going to do when you become mayor?
What is the first thing I'm going to do? Well, Big T, how's it going there? That's a great question. The first thing, you know, prior to this coronavirus, I was going to put an RFP, a request for proposals, to figure out our landfill situation. We're trucking trash over the island. We're going to start asking for ideas and start listening to people on how we make this island a safer, healthier place, a place where we're working together to solve all of our problems.
This next question comes from Carl Saxer via Facebook.
Hey, Carl, long time no see.
Carl says or asks, our island stands to lose a huge economic stimulus with the loss of the 30-meter telescope. In all the years I've known you, what has impressed me most is your gift of being able to bring people on opposing sides of an issue together to reach an agreement. What will you do to help resolve the TMT construction issue?
Okay, so first off, people need to realize that TMT is on Mauna Kea. Mauna Kea is state land, so that's state jurisdiction. The agencies that oversee the mountain are state agencies. And so I don't believe I would take the same role that the mayor has been in. I would try to bring people together to start talking and listening to people, and you know, try to find some solutions. You know, I realize that a lot of people who are protesting or protectors, whatever you want to say, are upset because the government has not been very forthcoming, hasn't been transparent, and I think, you know, there's things to be said there. On the other side of that argument is we're going to need jobs on this island, and a lot of people don't realize this, but astronomy was what helped us get it out of our last financial kind of depression on this island after the tsunami. So we are going to need to start talking about how we get people working not only in tourism industry, because that industry may not come back for another year or so. We need to look at ways to keep our kids here with good jobs. So we'll start talking to people and start listening to people, and, you know, sit them down. Okay.
The next question comes from Jolene. Jolene wants to know, do you have ideas on ways that the Big Island can diversify to generate revenue for our county instead of raising taxes and or fees to supplement revenue shortfalls year after year?
So, you know, this is a great point. We're in a paradigm shift. A paradigm is the way you see the world, and when a paradigm shifts, everything goes to zero. When things go to zero, you start thinking about new ways of doing things. And so one of our problems, I think, on this island is that we've always done it that way syndrome. If you keep on looking at the way you've always done things and you expect a different result, then you're not going to get out of there. So I think first off, we're going to start needing to talk to people, and we're going to need to start listening. You know, there was a cost of government commission that was put together a couple of years ago. They had some really great ideas. I don't know if any of those ideas ever came out and were worked on. I haven't seen the final product of the cost of government. I think there are some fees that we are going to need to charge. For example, at our zoo is free. I know the Cost of Government Commission talked about having fees for our visitors. So there's things that we're going to need to do. We're going to need to look at things a lot differently, but I think we're going to need to have people sit down and really talk and listen. Okay.
This next question comes from mitchroth.org from Lisa. Lisa wants to know, what are some opportunities you are aware of for individuals and small businesses to help those in need right now?
Oh boy, there's a lot of different things. Again, I'll start off with, to help individuals in need is, one, you can just stay home and social distance, because if we can keep our numbers below the curve, we can flatten the curve, then we don't create the need that you're seeing throughout the nation in places, again, like Chicago, New York, Louisiana, where if you're watching the news and you're watching the people in those hospitals, doctors crying because they can't go through it. That's one thing. The other thing is, there's a lot of organizations that are doing some great things already that need some funding. We talked about the Boys and Girls Club. I know that we're working with people in science and engineering and our STEM kids to help build face shields, masks. We were talking to someone, Dr. Neil Scott from the Makery. They're looking at those things as well. They're also looking at building ventilators, and they're going to need volunteers to help out. We talked to Brandy Menino from Hope Services, and they need people with healthcare backgrounds. They need other people to help with maybe making food, helping deliver some of the food for like the Boys and Girls Club. There's a lot of things that are happening out there that, people are coming together, and it's just amazing. One of the great things about this island is how people come together and how they help each other.
This next question comes from Josh, also through mitchroth.org. Josh asks, how is the county preparing for the potential of economically driven increases in crime rate? And what are some effective ways to proactively combat this possibility? Okay,
so can you ask the question one more time? Yep. How are we proactively looking at reducing the crime rate?
The potential, how is the county preparing for the potential of economically driven increases in crime rate?
Okay.
And what are some effective ways to proactively combat this possibility?
Okay. So we have seen a little bit of thefts, and by the way, the emergency proclamation is in effect, and so we have the enhanced penalties, and we've started charging some of those enhanced penalties. Some of those penalties make a 5-year sentence, a 10-year sentence, 10-year sentence, a 20-year sentence. If you do certain things, it could even be a misdemeanor offense that becomes a Class B felony. Or so we've seen some of those things. We've started applying some of those laws. But probably the best way that people can work together is to really get to know their neighbors and to be proactive about what's going on, and not just thinking about, what's going on with myself, thinking about what's going on with their neighbors, communicating with their neighbors, building your neighborhood watch, phone trees and things like that. We know that the most effective law enforcement agency in the country, it's not the Hawaii County Police Department, not the Honolulu Police Department, not New York or the FBI, it's communities that care. And when communities work together to protect themselves, crime rates go down. What I'm really concerned about, not so much the economic crimes, what I'm really concerned about is the domestic violence cases that are possibly going to happen because people are cooped up in their homes. They're under a lot of stress. And so it's a great time to learn communication skills and how you deal with your family and your spouse, and realize we're going to get through this. There's help that's out there for economic things, and just good time to pray. and connect to a higher power.
So Michael wants to know, how will you help diversify the economy in a post-pandemic world?
You know, there's a lot of great opportunities to diversifying the economy now. First and foremost, we need to start listening to people, get people together and start talking. There's a lot of things that we need to start looking at, a lot of opportunities, giga economies, you know, thinking about people who are going to be on their internets working and making sure we can improve the bandwidth for people in maybe some places where they don't have internet. The Big Island has a lot of agriculture. We really should be starting to think in the future, we may need to start working more on our own farms, helping our farmers, really increasing our agricultural diversity here on this island so people can eat. And start looking at how we look at jobs, bringing jobs in so our kids have a place to come back to. All right.
So the Pana Eva Zoo, this also comes from mitchroth.org. Leonard is asking, the Pana Eva Zoo requires approximately $900,000 per year in taxpayer funds to stay open, even though they charge no fees for parking or entry. How would you work to get this closer to net zero for the taxpayers? And would privatization be a better answer?
You know, I don't know if privatization would be a better answer. However, we can't just say, no, we don't do it that way. And I think there has to be some real discussions about that. I know that in the past, there was the Cost of Government Commission, and that was one of their recommendations, is to start charging fees to our tourists that, you know, use the zoo. So I think there are some possibilities of raising some fees there, but doing it wisely.
Okay, so just to kind of enlighten things, here's a good question from Lisa from mitchroth.org. What are some of your favorite ways that you have seen families and businesses using this time in unique, positive ways?
Well, I will say this. My kids are all living on the mainland. So my daughter's in New York, my other daughter's in Las Vegas, my son is in Pasadena. One of the things that we've done is we've had like a family night via Zoom or Skype or FaceTime. They all have the ability of doing these things, WebEx. And so we've had a family happy hour where we can kind of talk about what's going on, how they're dealing with their quarantines, their stay-at-homes. This morning, my eldest daughter and my wife and my youngest daughter did a yoga lesson over the line online. They are starting to teach me how to use Instagram. It's my first Instagram live. It's kind of interesting doing this. We've done little things on, we made sauerkraut and a smoothie this last weekend. I think this weekend I'm going to build a hydroponic garden. So there's a lot of interesting things. I think these meetings, these telemeetings, are probably the most interesting things. In our office, we're trying to practice social distancing. And so we have 125 people over 3 offices, and usually we're on a video conference between half of the office and the other half of the office. Today we did a teleconference we had most of the people in their offices calling from their office so we wouldn't be in the same room together. That's kind of interesting and different. Okay.
Chastity Hattori wants to know if you know where self-employed will get their essential worker pass.
You know, I know some businesses are doing that for their employees, but I don't know that you have to have an essential worker pass. I'm an essential worker. I don't have a pass. I don't think anybody in my office has an essential worker pass. Okay.
So we want to welcome everyone again to our live Q&A here with Mitch Roth, and thank you for sending in your questions. You can go ahead and keep sending in your questions if you still want to do so. You can do so on mitchroth.org or right here on our Facebook Live. Here's a question from Dale coming in from our website, mitchroth.org. Germany is certifying those that have recovered from the virus to return back to the workforce. Your thoughts on that?
You know, my understanding, and I am not a doctor, but I've been kind of following this, that at the present time, if you've had it, the likelihood of you getting it again is very low. I'm not quite sure if it's completely nil. I know the way you make a flu vaccine is you use the antibodies from people who've had it because your body learns how to react. I think that's something that's going to happen on a national level in the near future, because we're going to need to get people back to work. And it may be those people that have a certificate saying that they're able to go back to work. I think it's an interesting proposal. I think probably need to get a little bit more science behind it right now.
So Leonard says local culture is to hug friends when you see them. And during this COVID-19 pandemic, I still see this happening at Walmart. He said. Would you be open to creating a local style video that shows the proper behavior for safety? And he thinks some need maybe some moving images to teach others. And would you be willing to create a video PSA on how to greet friends during this pandemic?
Well, I think we're going to do that. That's an awesome idea. You know, it's really, everybody must be going through this. It's really strange not to hug, not to shake hands. You know, we've gone from the fist bump to the chicken wing to the air hug. Get my air hugs out there. I think it's a great idea. I got one here. P4K165. What are we going to do to deter other counties and states from sending their severely mentally ill and homeless to our struggling county? You know, that's a great question. There was a meeting today, and one of the things that's happening when people fly over here, if they don't have a place to stay, we're trying to send them back. And I think Hope Services may have paid for the first one that happened. I believe HTA is going to get some funds to do the next one. So yeah, it's a great question.
Well, that's about all the questions that we have.
You know, and Loeka just joined us. Hey, Loeka.
Lolo.
Lolo. So, well, I got Popo and Lolo. That's awesome.
Well, we want to thank everyone again. Mitch does this every Thursday, 6 p.m. So we encourage you to send in your questions. Again, you can send them into mitchroth.org. When we're up on live, you can send in your questions. And as it pops up, we'll go ahead and answer your questions. And visit mitchroth.org. We do have a questionnaire there. And I just want to say a big mahalo to you, Mitch, for doing this on Thursdays so that we can see you, we can hear, get your mana'o on things, especially now with everything that's going on. And I especially want to thank our campaign team and everyone, our volunteers who have been reaching out and who have been helping. Even through this whole shift that has been happening, we continue to do the best that we can with our campaign. So thank you all so very much.
Absolutely, yeah, and thank you so much, Pumai. I really, really appreciate you and your husband Brandon for everything you do. And you know, at this time, for those of you who are following us, thank you so much for following us. For me right now, it really is about saving lives, and so our attention has really been focused on what we can do to make sure that we're all safe, that our family members are safe, that our healthcare providers, that they're safe, and what we can do. So I love the ideas when you guys send the ideas in. If you know of things that are happening that people can get involved to help out, please send them through. It really is helpful for us and for other people. And, you know, just a final note, really take some time and be kind to some other people. There's a lot of people that are under a lot of stress. One of the things that we can do is we can reach out and just say hey to people, write them a note, tell them how much you appreciate them. I think one of the great things about times like this is it gives us an opportunity to appreciate all of the things we have. And on this island, there's a lot of really wonderful things, but more importantly, there's a lot of really wonderful people. And just thank you so much for being who you guys are. And thanks for listening.
Yeah, and stay connected right here too to Mitch Roth's Facebook page. And of course, you have a YouTube and online at mitchroth.org as well, right?
I guess I do. I got amazing people who are helping me there, teaching me, you know, day by day how to use things like Instagram and Facebook and you know, YouTube Live. So thank you all for all the help.
And also one last thing, we have been doing interviews with some community members. So next week, be sure to tune in. We'll be talking stories with Kimo Alameda of Bay Clinic, CEO of Bay Clinic, also Brandy Menino of Hope Services, and Dr. Scott so far.
Right.
And we'll have some fun interviews as well in between. We got Anuhea, our musician
cool.
artist, that's going to be jumping in on a live with us too. So that'll be fun as well.
I can't wait. All right. Thank you guys. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great night. Stay safe and stay well. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Aloha.